Hello everyone, I am Left, and today I want to talk about what I call the scene within the scene, or in a different way, the challenger level competitive community in Vainglory. I repeatedly see challenger teams with high potential just fall apart, split off, or stop playing the game entirely. At first, this confused me a lot, but after watching them for a long time, and even going through these situations myself, I have found some core issues with the Challenger series and our lower esports scene as a whole, and that's what I want to talk about today. It's invisible to most entirely. Most people just don't even watch the Challenger matches or follow the Challenger tournaments, but the realm of Challengers has many problems. Things like lack of structure and formality in the online tournaments, high team dropout rates and cancellations, substitutes brought in from places that weren't even on the team members leaving in the middle of the season. This has to do with a lot of things, but first I want to talk about the demographic. 14 to 18 year olds, and guys at that. They're immature. Now, I'm not saying that I'm an exception to this. I'm not saying I'm not an exception to this. I know that there are exceptions to this. But typically, your 14 to 18 year old guy that is playing Vainglory is not the most mature individual. So many people that are on up-and-coming challenger teams, or even certain Vainglory 8 teams, start Twitter beef all the time with enemy players, with even their friends, and are just generally misbehaving on social media. Team split-ups over different issues in the team due to lack of coaches, and just general in-game toxicity making them unattractive to Vainglory 8 organizations. So that is one thing. Another thing is school. They have school. They're in high school, and that's pretty intensive for them. They have sports. Lots of people play varsity sports, and that really limits your time to play Vainglory. And say you want to be in the Challenger series. Oh, but you have a hockey game during the tournament. Well, that's just tough. There's nothing you can do about it. Lastly, they have parents limiting their playtime, and parents who don't believe that gaming could be more than a time waster. I know this because I had this issue. I was on a team that made it to the top 8 of the Autumn 2016 Challenger bracket. We had to forfeit in our match against Necrolite because our laner's mom took his iPad away. It sounds funny, but it's indicative of the demographic issue in the lower level of Vainglory esports. After this forfeit was when I decided to become an analyst rather than a full-time player, and look how that worked out for me. I'm with Nova now, and I've shown my parents the full spectrum of what I do in Vainglory, and they support me for it. When you really make it big, as someone like Truth or Lone Delphi has, typically the parents realize that, wow, this is a real thing. And that's really good. But for our talented individuals in the Challenger series, there has to be support along the way, and a realization that my kid can actually do something big here, on the way to the big time, for things to actually work out. And that's where it typically falls apart. This makes it virtually impossible to get a team of 3 teenagers into the big leagues without having various roadblocks. I can name so many players that are my age, have been playing Vainglory for as long as, more than, or a little bit under as long as I have been playing Vainglory for, and they have been beating their heads against the Challenger brackets since their inception, always sabotaged by team split-ups, betrayals, parents grounding them, school, sports, or just even inconsistent home internet. But what does this mean? Why am I talking about this today? So, for true numerical esports growth, we have to play the long game. Teenage guys are Vainglory's biggest demographic, whether Super Evil targeted them or not. I know from personal experience that once you go to college, your time to invest in hobbies like Vainglory and freedom to do so rises exponentially. Next, I want to talk about Overwatch. Overwatch, if you don't know, it's a team-based multiplayer first-person shooter. Blizzard makes it. You can play it on PC, you can play it on console, and it's very popular. It has an up-and-coming esports scene. Blizzard's esports department this year sent scouting emails to the top 500 players in North America on their servers. Why? This is because Blizzard means to make Overwatch into a tier 1 esport with city teams like the NFL or the Premier League has. These scouting emails were sent out to each player in the top 500 on NA, and their player data, their age, their all of their stats were sent out to prospective team owners, people that like own the Miami Heat or the Cleveland Indians. Those people are all looking at certain Overwatch players in the top 500, thinking about buying a spot in the Overwatch League and fielding teams of people like you. Those of you in Vainglorious Bronze, Silver, and Gold, and even Pinnacle of Awesome, that's you. Super Evil is playing the long game when it comes to esports growth. Most of you will be in college sometime in the next 5 years. Retaining a top 1,000 rank in North America is an incredible accomplishment, but our current esports scene is too small to appreciate it. It will grow, and eventually it will encompass all of the sad dudes I mentioned before, the talented players that are constantly foiled by the tumultuous Challenger Series. So I guess what I wanted to talk about today is that it may not be visible, but there is a future for playing Vainglory if you're not in the Vainglory 8. If you have dreams of becoming a competitive player, but you're not even vainglorious, you are maybe stuck somewhere in tiers 8 or 9, you have time. Like, as long as you stay dedicated and you do end up ranking up, if you can somehow break into the top 1,000 in North America, work on your mechanics, there is going to come a time where you do get this opportunity. You don't have to be on one of the top 8 teams. To be honest, I've always wished that they would expand the top league to maybe 16 or even 24 teams, because I think it would just be more fun. But they haven't yet, and I think it is causing a lot of players to quit. Not necessarily casual players quitting the game, but competitive players getting angst and frustrated from repeatedly banging their heads against the wall that is the Challenger Series. Because of the lack of structure and the demographic of people that are always playing in the Challenger Series, it's pretty unorganized. You always have teams forfeiting, teams that have to pull in a sub that isn't even on their team, etc. It always seems to work out like that, and I just don't like that. But just because it's really small now does not mean that Super Evil intends to keep the esports scene this small. If they kept it this small, they would never make any revenue off of it. And what would even be the point of having it then? They're a business. Vainglory Esports is a meritocracy. A year ago, no one would have even known my name. But now I'm working as a analyst for Nova's Vainglory 8 and Challenger teams. And I have like a bunch of YouTube subscribers and people that like to watch me on Twitch. It's a meritocracy. Just because you didn't get in early, or you weren't an early adopter, you're not on Cloud9, you're not on TSM, you don't have connections with pro players, that doesn't mean that you can't get in. I want to talk about one of my best friends in all of Vainglory, Brutal Turtle. Him and I were in the same guild when guilds were first released in autumn 2015. We were in the guild Vision together, and we were friends, and we were both like tier 7. I always played ranked with him and stuff, and we both had aspirations of becoming competitive players. And eventually the guild broke up. We went our separate ways, and from there on out, we both, I don't know, it was like we both dedicated ourselves to making something of ourselves in the Vainglory community. And look at him now, and look at me now. He's the analyst for Echo Fox, and I'm an analyst for Nova. It's a meritocracy. We were part of a no-name guild, both like tier 7. We met there, we set out to do what we needed to do, and grow ourselves in the Vainglory community, and we did. And that means that you can too. Just because it's not autumn 2015 anymore, if you start now, it's not too late. Super Evil plans to grow Vainglory far into the future. Just because you start in 2017 doesn't mean you're ever going to make it, or doesn't mean you're going to have less of a chance to make it than somebody that started in 2015. That's really all I gotta say in this video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something useful. I didn't really know how I was going to format this out. I know that a lot of these thoughts have been swirling around in my head for a long time, and I didn't really know how to put them into a video. But I really wanted to talk about this today. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all later.